Members of the autism community are pushing back against Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s pledge to find the cause of autism by September, calling the plan harmful. Kennedy announced last week that the Department of Health and Human Services will launch a massive testing and research effort to find the cause of autism spectrum disorder in the next 5 months. He then followed up earlier this week by stating in a press conference that the agency could have some answers by then. During the Wednesday press conference, Kennedy stressed that HHS would investigate an environmental toxin he believes what is causing rising rates of autism spectrum disorder, contradicting what the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention believes is contributing to the increased prevalence of the condition. Environmental toxin. The Autism Society of America's chief marketing officer, Kristen Roth, described Kennedy's focus on an environmental toxin as extremely misleading and his commitment to finding a definitive cause of autism spectrum disorder as harmful to the autism community. While more research is needed, there has been no discussion about actually serving this community to be better supported, including and to have services that reflect diversity across the spectrum, Roth told The Hill. The CDC published a report earlier this week that found 1 in 31 children in the United States were diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder in 2022, continuing a trend of rising prevalence from previous years. The report noted that the increasing rate was likely linked to improved diagnostic methods that had become more widely available. But Kennedy expressed skepticism that improved diagnostics are the reason for the rise, telling reporters that it has to be environmental and there is no genetic link to the condition. One of the things I think we need to move away from today is this ideology that the autism prevalence increases. The relentless increases are simply artifacts of lower diagnosis, better recognition, or changing diagnostic criteria, he said. This is a preventable disease. We know it's an environmental exposure. It has to be. Genes do not cause epidemics. It can provide a vulnerability. You need an environmental toxin. Research suggests that autism spectrum disorder stems from a combination of genetic factors and environmental influences. Autism researcher and clinician, Doreen Samuelson, said that over 100 genes have been identified as being associated with autism disorder. I think the term epidemic implies a single identified cause, but I don't think autism works that way. She said it's a complex, lifelong condition. And since we have moved to kind of a spectrum, we are really viewing a very broad population with a lot of diversity within that population. Roth added that the Trump administration's cuts to the Department of Education and HSS and proposed cuts to Medicaid are in direct opposition to Kennedy's claim that he wants to support the autism community and find out more about the condition. Amid the administration's broader efforts to slash the size and scope of the federal government, it has carried out mass firings at the HHS and the Education Department and signaled it intends to make much deeper cuts at both agencies. An initial draft of the White House budget report request reportedly calls for reducing HHS budget by a third, while Trump has signed executive orders seeking to dismantle the Education Department entirely, even though he put somebody on top of it, make that make sense, but whatever. Kennedy's language while speaking about the HHS plan to find a cause for autism spectrum disorder is also harmful, Roth said, particularly his comments suggesting that those with the condition will never be productive members of society. Kennedy falsely claimed during the press conference this week that the most cases of autism spectrum disorder are now severe and that the condition destroys family. Oh, I remember this. There are kids who will never pay taxes, they'll never hold a job, they'll never play baseball, they'll never write a poem, they'll never go on a date. He told reporters many of them will never use a toilet unassisted, and we need to recognize that we are doing this to our children. Roth called the comments inaccurate and said that Kennedy mischaracterized an entire community. So many people know and love someone with autism who can do all of these things. Since autism falls along a spectrum, there are many people with the condition who achieve complete independence, while others might need constant care. But even those people, Roth added, can lead meaningful, quality lives. To insinuate and define people's experience and inaccurately claim that autism destroys families is so harmful and destructive. So, where do we even start? Okay, I guess we could get the elephant out of the room. RFK Jr. has said a lot of stuff I just thought was nuts, but this is pretty high up on the list. I mean, I'm kind of shocked that you can even, because it's like this. Do I believe that there is that we could someday possibly find a way to completely understand the causes of autism. Sure. But you're not going to get that by cutting the HHS's budget and, slashing at the education department. That is totally counterintuitive to supposedly researching into. I don't even like saying cure, because they make autism sound like it's cancer. It's like his comment is so outrageous that it's almost, I saw the press conference and him say it, but it really sounds almost like something you would see in an SNL skit. I mean, how in the hell are you going to claim that kids with autism, you have a window into what's going to happen with them? They will never pay taxes. They'll never hold a job. They'll never play baseball. They'll never write a poem. Because it's like, if you look at what is mostly characterizing of autism, it is the inability to read social cues. And as this official with that organization said, there are many people with autism who have led productive lives. I had a coworker at my job who is autistic, actually ended up getting on my bad side because they tried to ask me if I had it, which made me sick to my stomach. Because people have this tendency to basically lump a word onto anyone that is not the same as them. So, like, if I were sitting here and talking about sports, and oh man, this girl over here is so hot, and having my pants hanging down, they would call that cool and normal. But if I want to read something about the news, or go and draw something, or maybe read a book, then I'm weird and I must have autism. That is the perception that people have, and that's unfortunately what just makes me not want to be associated with that characterization. Of course, people are going to insult me by accusing me of having it anyway, but I'm talking about like someone in the real world thinking I have it, based off of really just observations that they make that they're not equipped to actually like diagnose anyone with. There are a lot of people that do things I don't consider to be normal, but basically it's like this. You'll accuse someone of having that for like making jokes, right? But then the person who's like sitting to themselves and you try to talk to them, they won't say anything to you. They won't get accused of that. So it's one of those things where it's a term that gets thrown around a lot when people are insulting someone. But with Kennedy, it's so crazy because it's like, this is the guy who's supposed to be wanting to find a cure to it, out of some misguided belief that it destroys families. And his administration, the people he's working for, the people who are in charge of these budgets, they're not doing anything to make anyone with common sense believe, yeah, this is actually something they want to take a crack at trying to figure out the root causes of. Of course, I think the rise in cases of autism is, again, they found more ways to diagnose it than they were able to before. I don't think people are doing anything genetically. I guess I'll also say this. I do believe, if you want to talk about environmental factors, and this isn't even just like a thing with the virus, right, from 4 years ago, that had us all sitting in our houses. But if you look at a lot of kids nowadays, and this again is just an issue with this generation and the whole computerized stuff, people really will sit in front of devices and like either talk to no one, or if they do talk to someone, it's a person on the computer. They'll have people around them and they won't interact with them at all. And I think, if you want to talk about environmental influences, that would be something to look into. But of course, they're not going to do that, because this isn't about actually trying to, supposedly make people productive members of society in spite of whatever condition they have, supposedly prevent the condition, right? Make them more normal, quote unquote. It's just, a way to insult people, spread some misinformation about what autism actually is, and say something outrageous, which I guess, mission accomplished. But man, it's really sad to think about how, like, because again, even as someone who acknowledges that people do use autism, the word, the term, as a way to insult others, I've been called it as an insult, for example. Um, it's really sad to think about how you can have, like, RFK Jr. is not stupid in the sense of, like, this is someone who went to college, is someone who, was a supposedly respected environmental lawyer at one point. And it's like that guy will get on TV and tell you that a disorder that is treatable, that is, something that can clearly be helped out with, and even people who have it have led productive lives. This man will tell you that disorder destroys families. God, man, they don't even care anymore. They'll say any old crazy stuff